Good evening and welcome to another edition of Spanning the Need. Tonight we have a very special guest, someone that has given their life to education and the students at Youngstown State. And well, I should also say he's also the director of bands and orchestra, professor at Youngstown State University, and the conductor of the W.D. Packard Band, Dr. Stephen Gage. Doctor, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, good evening, Anthony. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. That's a mouthful. That title's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a lot. Good for you. Impressive.
Well, when I've known you for so long, it's easy to say director of this and that and professor. So, well, we know that you have nearly 30 years of being a part of Youngstown State University, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But I think what people may not understand is kind of how did you get to Youngstown State? Kind of talk about your career and how you got to where we're to Youngstown State.
Sure. I actually grew up in a small town in western New York in a county where there are actually more dairy cows than there are people. And I was fortunate to have a high school band director, Don Hughes, who was a World War II veteran, a brilliant musician, jazz pianist, trumpet player, who settled his family there and just was really a huge factor in my young life as a musician. And then I was also a drum corps kid, Anthony. And so the combination of those things, and I was a drum set player, so I got, in those days, there were a lot of gigs for musicians, and I got to play with everything from Dodie Lynn and the Guitar Men, which is a country band, to a disco band, the 70s had lots of that, to some very, very good commercial bands and jazz. And I went to school at Fredonia State, and I got a school that's very similar to YSU, and got a BME, and I taught in my neighboring community to where I grew up for 2 years, where my cousins were actually in the band, and my stepbrother was in the band as well. Then I went to the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, and I got a master's degree. And I was still, at that point, not sure if I wanted to be a teacher, a conductor, or a percussionist. But during that journey, it was pretty obvious to me that the experiences I already had and as a teacher were rising up in terms of the stock of my desires. So I got a job in Central New York at a big high school in Auburn. And like all of my stops, I had a great mentor there, Norm Beamish, who he and his family were basically adopted me. And I was really blessed to have them. He had been a 30-year teacher himself, and he shared all that with me on a constant basis, sat in all my rehearsals for the 9 years that I was there, and coached me through it and guided me. If I had a request for almost anybody in any field, Anthony, it would be to have mentors. I've had consistent mentors in my life, and I'm grateful. Then I went to the University of Illinois, and I met my lovely wife, Stephanie, when I was there. And I did a 1-year residency for my doctorate, got a job in Kansas, Emporia State, where things were going swimmingly well as I completed my degree in the summers. But in the summer of 1993, I got a call from a student here, Rocco Criazzo, who was one of my Auburn High School students, a trombonist, studying with Mike Christ, who taught here for many years. And
was actually the dean and actually did a variety of different positions at Youngstown State.
Mike had a great career here at YSU, including being the trombone teacher. And interestingly enough, he worked with me with the bands when I first came.
Oh, that's something new you never learned.
Yeah, it was in the 90s, of course. So we came and interviewed, and in those days, the building that Jim Tressel lives in now was an inn, almost like a bed and breakfast. And we stayed they let me bring my wife Stephanie here to the interview, which is a little bit unusual. And we stayed in one of the front rooms, and the committee, after the day of interviews, came up to our suite and sat on the canopy bed with my wife and I. And basically, I got the impression that if we didn't say yes, we would come here. They weren't going to leave the room. That included the legendary Tony Leonardi and Jim Umble and Mike Christ, those three people in particular. So we said yes, and we moved out here, and we've our two children, Claudia and Brendan, now 26 and 22 respectively, and my son Matthew from my first marriage, all grew up here and went to Poland High School. They went to YSU, and actually Brendan is going to graduate in about 90 minutes or 2 hours. He was a senior last year and missed out on his chance. So we're all going to put a lot of warm clothes on Anthony and go over to this stadium and watch Brendan graduate. Our daughter Claudia is home this weekend too for Mother's Day, and she's now in a double master's degree at Indiana University in Bloomington. And Brendan is waiting for music schools to kind of open back up after COVID-19 to decide where and what he's going to do. We've had a great journey here, Anthony. When I came in the mid-'90s, Jim Tressel was winning football games like crazy. And one of my jobs was the marching band. And Mike Chris, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, was my colleague. And I thought, oh my goodness, what a great time to come here. The city was on fire and the campus was abuzz. So we worked really hard to build up a really good marching band. And I think we won 2 of 4 national championship games that I was honored to be part of. And for the second one, Coach, now President Tressel, gave me a championship ring that I proudly wear, although it's big enough that it basically covers my whole hand. So that was a great way to get started here at YSU and to kind of be immersed in the Valley in a number of ways. The marching band is kind of the musical ambassador of YSU, and I really enjoyed that. In the late 90s, it became obvious that I couldn't do everything that they were trying to ask me to do, and graciously they filled a position. But I've always been there for the people that do the marching band since then. And for most of my time here, I've conducted the University Wind Ensemble, of late the Symphony Orchestra, and also the Youth Symphony in Youngstown, as well as the Packard Band. So I've had a few hats, Anthony.
Well, it's interesting you bring up President Tressel. We've had a conversation with Mr. Tressel about you.
Oh no!
Yeah. and actually, the President Tressel actually said, he goes, and this is coming from the president about you. YSU has been truly blessed that Dr. Stephen Gage chose to invest his heart and soul in our students, community, and Dana School of Music. Dr. Gage has truly been a difference maker.
Wow, that's so kind.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm humbled by it, Anthony. I decided pretty shortly after the time that I came here that I was going to try to be here and be here not only in presence of teaching, but emotionally and connect to our community. Stephanie and I became very involved in our school district here in Poland. We even served as the president of the Poland Band Association and vice president. I tried to, be a presence of sorts, I guess, in a number of contexts in our community, especially on the campus, serving on 2 or 3 dean searches, provost search. But I was thrilled when they brought Jim Tressel here to be president. There was a stakeholders committee that reached out to people like me on the campus that knew him from his time of being our football coach. And I vividly remember writing to them that bringing Jim Tressel here could be a huge plus for the university. I watched him as the coach of our team. He was really gracious about including me in a number of events that athletics basically hosted that let us feature our bands. The summer events that we had. Mr. Malmaser was here at the time as the athletic director, and he and then coach, now President Tressel, were really, really nice to me. Jim Tressel is one of my mentors. I told him that again last week as he kind of did a really cool introduction of me for our.
Yeah, we saw that. We saw that from the other day.
I was reminded just the kind of guy that he is. You know, in this day and age, they talk about brands all the time, Anthony. And Jim Tressel's the brand for YSU. I mean, let's face it, he's handsome, articulate. He has a character that is really strong, a passion that is infectious on people, including me. I fell in love with him really in the 90s. And when I thought that he could come back here and be our president, I was so thrilled, and I was right. We have gotten through this last 5 or 6, 7 years, however long he's been back here. When other universities have really faltered, YSU has flourished. And, you know, success and lack of success often start at the top. And I'm going to give Jim Tressel a tremendous amount of credit. Talk about significant difference maker. Holy cow, Anthony.
Yeah. And that's a great thing is you talked a little bit about your son not being able to graduate last year because of the pandemic. How has the pandemic kind of changed over the last year with music? Because you really can't perform together. You only can kind of perform 6 feet away, distance, and everything like that if you can. But you guys try to do a lot of change. Talk a little bit about the pandemic and kind of how you kind of had to change on the turn of a dial.
Well, it basically shut us down for the most part. There were numbers of people that could congregate in a certain space, really from March of 2020 through, I'm going to say, into the second semester. There was very little. Maybe you could have 7 or 8 musicians in a space at one time with 6 feet between them and masks on. That's certainly not an orchestra or a band or a choir or jazz band. Those things are much more intimate. They rely on listening to each other and adjusting. They rely on certain numbers, quotas of numbers that allow them to function. So music schools were really hampered, not just Youngstown, all of them. And that's been one of the things with Brendan, who's going to go to grad school, is that, you know, school just isn't really what it was, let's say, 2 years ago, or even, frankly, Anthony, 18 months ago. And I think YSU, like all of our peer institutions, has had to make adjustments and accommodations in that world that has allowed us to continue to go on. Virtual performances. I just got yesterday, I did an honor group in Maryland, and it was all virtual. I did it on a very similar format to this. I talked to the students. I actually had to videotape myself conducting. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Each student sent his or her performance of a certain piece with a click track, and had to watch me conduct so they could play their clarinet part or their trumpet part. And I saw the video not 24 hours ago, and it's magical. It's not the same, though. You know, music is like sports, Anthony. It's something where there's a real interpersonal connection that happens. I've always looked at myself as a musical coach. I think I relate to people like Jim Tressel because that's how I look at life. I think you have people who have responsibilities, and then the we, that is the community of people involved in it, share in the joy and even sometimes the frustrations, right, of the things that we do that allow us to, in this case, recreate art. And I think YSU is a real special place for music because the region that we live in has a wide diversity of ethnicities and a long history of music, both classical and commercial music, and certainly the pockets of churches and so on in this valley that have their own little niche, if you will, of music that makes YSU what it is. And I have really enjoyed that facet. I feel blessed to spend 28 years of my life as a part of the musical community. And we have enjoyed living here. I'm proud of YSU. I'll always be a YSU faculty member. I'll always be a Penguin, Anthony. The first thing I did when I moved here was I bought a license plate for my car that said YSU Penguins. Penguin Band.
I think they got all those now. Like you can like put a rim around your license plate and
Oh yeah,
everything like that.
yeah. I drove everywhere. I tell you, I want to tell you a little anecdote that will quantify some of what I've said about President Tressel. I used to go to the gym in the student center. First thing in the morning, I get there maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and this was Jim Tressel's first and second year as a president. And the car that he drove off the campus was located in the same lot I was parking in. And I would get there, and I'd say 1-2 days a week, we just happened to be in that space at the same time. And what he was doing was loading the GPS in the car for the various high schools that he was going to visit. He knew that we had to recruit students, and it was something that I knew he was going to be really good at. When he was the football coach, he's the person that used to say to me, Steve, we got the state of Youngstown. We have to be able to attract the very best students in this region to come to YSU and play football. And I said, hey, that's brilliant. I'm going to do the same thing. And I spent the last 28 years doing that.
I think what's funny about that story is, excuse me, I have another call coming in. And who would you be? Oh, I know you.
I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I feel like an era is coming to an end. Oh my goodness sakes. Congratulations.
Oh, Cindy, thanks so much. It's so great. She's one of the great people of the history of Youngstown State.
Oh my gosh. No, you're one of the great.
We should all have the jubilance of Cynthia Anderson.
Well, the sad part is we have people. So we have more people all have degrees here, like 10 degrees between the three of us, a couple doctorates. I get a couple masters, which I just got mine. And I've known Dr. Anderson for 20 years, and she was also a mentor of mine through Greg Goulas and everything like that. And I wanted to bring Dr. Anderson in because she has a message for you that she wanted to come on.
Well, like I said earlier, I do feel like an era has come to an end. Dr. Gage, you truly took our university, our performances, everything to another level. I will tell you that as I sat on the stage, whether I was the vice president of student affairs at the time or whether I was the president, and listened to the orchestra and the performances, mostly when I was president, I had a huge lump in my throat when you finished because I had to get up and talk, and I thought I'm not going to be able to do it. The performance where you did the Spirit of America and the salute to America, I could have broken down crying for a half an hour, and I had to get up and speak. And you are just one in a million. You know, you have given so much more than just education. You've changed the university, you've changed your students, you've changed our community. And I know, you can say, oh, those are just words. No, they are not words. You put all of that into action, and you took everything to another level. And I just cherish those times, and I also cherish your friendship so very, very much. Your support and your friendship, which I always knew I had. You're one in a million.
Yeah, you're beautiful, Cindy. Thanks so very much. And I likewise enjoyed your friendship and support over the years. One of the things that we all understand about education is that when you go into it for the right reasons, which Cynthia Anderson did and Steve Gage did, the returns are profound. The friendships, the love and sincerity, it is really special. And these last few weeks have been pretty cool, I have to tell you. As people are reaching out and as we get ready to make this new chapter. But Cindy, I'm like you, I'm always going to be a proud Penguin. And I value your support and what YSU has allowed me to do in my life and career is something for which I will never be anything but thankful. They really, the doors were always open here. I have some friends in other places that will say things to me about their jobs, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't have those obstacles here. There were some, of course, but they weren't they weren't things that were really important. They were always just little bumps in the road. But you know, I love the students here. I like the people in the Valley, and I really felt when we moved here, I could just tell that this was going to be a good place for me. And it's people like Cynthia Anderson that made it that way.
Well,
I usually got yelled at by her.
I had to yell at him many, many, many times. So did Greg Gould. He got yelled at a lot, believe me. See what kind of a person he is now. I think we kind of fixed him, but gee whiz,
Holy cow.
that was work.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do.
I do want to add to something that Dr. Gage said, though. You know, you'll understand what I'm saying. I never had a bad day. I never had a horrible, horrible day. And I say that to people out here, and I'll say, you know, when my feet hit the floor in the morning, I couldn't wait to get to Youngstown State University. I loved it every single day. And yeah, you had hard days and you had arguments and all that, but I still loved it. And, you know, I always tell people that's what I wish for all of these graduates. I'm a little bit involved with the Boulder City Sunrise Rotary and the graduation of our students there. And that's all I want for them. Just be as happy in your career as you and I have been. It has been great. Great.
It is. You know, our mutual friend, Louis B. Free, everybody knows Louis, he's like the undying hippie, you know, of Youngstown.
Absolutely.
My very first interview with him a few years back, I must have said to him that I had never worked a day in my life.
Yep.
You know, I said that to him, and he reminds me of that. And it's because when, like you, Cindy, when I got up and I brushed my teeth and I got in the car ready to go, I just wanted to make sure that I was the kind of teacher and friend and mentor that my students deserved, and the kind of representative, in this case, music, that YSU deserved. And I've been blessed. There's no doubt. I'm so grateful.
Dr. Gage.
You've made a difference in many lives.
Thanks, Cynthia. God bless you.
Dr. Gage, what do you think is going to be the hardest part about leaving YSU?
Not getting to do this every day. I mean, I must tell you, I've had some medical things that I won't elaborate on. Last summer, it was the second time in 2005 I have a disease called Marfan Syndrome, and it reared its ugly head in 2005, and it came back in the summer of 2020. Like a lot of bad things happened in 2020. And so we're at a point where, you know, I have to take some heed to the kind of father and grandfather and husband that I would like to be. My in-laws are aging. They live in a kind of a pod in East Central Illinois that we just bought a home out there. We're going to move there and be there for them. But I do plan on continuing to do the Packard Band. I do plan on continuing to guest conduct and teach and hopefully find some sort of way to share all the things that I love to do without maybe all of the pressure of a full-time gig. I'd like to think Youngstown State got its mileage out of me. And I have loved doing it. And I think it's time for, you know, someone younger and more virile to come. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm going to miss it very much.
So Dr. Gage, how many years total was it at YSU?
28 at YSU, 42 teaching years.
Dr. Anderson, how many years for you?
A total of 44.6.
So I have like nearly 90 years of teaching experience in higher education.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, huh, Anthony? Yeah.
Oh, dear. Now, are you trying to make us feel bad or old or what here?
No comment.
Thank you. He doesn't want to get yelled at.
Good.
I'll get like this mean text or phone call or something later after this.
Yeah, let's think about this. Okay, so in addition to everything else that I was fortunate to do, this university sent myself and 50 students to Carnegie Hall twice, Anthony.
Yeah,
and that's got to be an experience.
And you know, being a Penguin proud guy like I am, I mean, I was just remembering that. I mean, that kind of thing for me personally, of course, was profound. But those memories and the opportunity to look up on the whatever they call those boards outside the building and see Youngstown State University and I think I did 14 convention performances while I was here, proudly waving the flag for YSU at each one of them. telling people that we're up here in Northeast Ohio and come check us out. I am unabashed in terms of recruiting. I can tell you, I go for the jugglers.
You've had such an experience on people that we talked to a couple other people. This one is coming from a gentleman you worked with probably for a long time, for almost 15 years, the homecoming advisor, and Dr. Anderson mentioned his name, Greg Goulas.
Oh, yeah, sure, Greg.
So he basically said, we found out the date was upcoming. The first call that I made was to Dr. Gage so that we could coordinate halftime, the underlying music we should use when he announced our King and Queens. And he was always willing to take into consideration what is needed and to incorporate in the needs at the halftime show. He was a great friend over 3 decades and a very best Penguin musician around.
That's sweet. Yeah, Greg's one of the good guys. He's such a typical person here, huh, Cindy? I mean, he's the kind of person that makes this place special.
Yep.
And it really, we got spoiled, I think. I've been spoiled by that.
And that's what you miss. That's what you truly miss, because I think sometimes we take that for granted, and we think that that's all over the country, and no, it is not. We are very, very special.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think it's true. I'll find out probably.
Yeah. But, you're gonna miss it. I'm gonna tell you. I kept thinking, this will be easy. Nah.
Well, you've had an impact on a variety of people, and I think one person that really said it was Dean Paul. We talked a little bit to Dean Paul, and Dean Paul says Steve has not only had an impact on the Dana School of Music, but is also the entire region. He's been involved in so many aspects of making music in Dana and the Mahoning Valley, from athletic bands to orchestras into the wind ensemble, to leading the master's program in the wind conducting in Dana, to conducting our region's youth orchestra and the Packard Band. He has approached all these endeavors with passion, gusto, and tremendous dedication, end quote.
That's thoughtful. Well,
normally I would kind of find a student to bring on, but I've not been able to find one. Oh, wait a minute. I have someone here. Who would this be? Oh, it's Shawn.
Shawn. I have a large family. Shawn is one of my sons, adopted. Hi, Shawn. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How about you?
So Shawn Reynolds is one of your former students. He's actually, and he's also the Howland Schools, local schools in Warren, Ohio, band director. What do you want to say to Dr. Gage, Shawn?
I just wouldn't be where I'm at without anything he's taught me, everything he's taught me, both as a musician, as a person, and as a teacher. I feel like I channel Dr. Gage into everything that I do, and I feel like he doesn't realize, but he's got a lot of grandchildren out there in the world, because they all get the firsthand Dr. Gage experience, and anything that he's taught us through the years, which is first and foremost to love music. And we channel that all. Any of his students, any of Dr. Gage's students has always channeled that to their students. And whether they realize it or not, they get it. But I just think it's fantastic that he's leaving such a legacy in this valley, in all of the students that he's taught, and now all of his grandchildren. Excuse me, all of his grand students, his grand music students. So I just thank him for everything that he's taught us and instilled this high level of musicianship and such an amazing cast of teachers in this area who we owe everything to Dr. Gage and to YSU. And it's just, we're so privileged to have had the experience of him. And I thank God every day that I had the experience of Dr. Gage and what he's taught me, and that I can channel that to my students.
Thanks. I love you, Shawn. Shawn's a shining example.
Love you too, Dr. Gage.
Shawn is a shining example of what makes YSU great. He came here, and I, among other things, I have a picture that I had in my office for several years of Shawn being the drum major of the YSU Marching Pride, and it was I'm not sure, it might have been a national championship game. We played so many of them in those days, and that vim and vigor that you see today is it's been omnipresent in him. And I feel like we get special kids to come to our school. I don't know how else to say it. I tell my colleagues in the profession, They ask me, what is it, Steve, that makes this such a great place? I said, you're just going to have to come visit. I don't have I didn't write a book about it. Maybe I should think about it now. I feel like I've always been privileged to be around students like Shawn, and they learn a lot, perhaps, but I learn a lot more than they learn from me, from them. I can tell you.
And I think that that's a good follow-up. And you talk about what you've learned or what the students have had you learn. What have you learned the most about being around YSU and the community itself?
Well, I have some mantras, Anthony. That's what happens when you get a little bit older and your hair turns gray and you have more wrinkles than you used to have. One of them is Youngstown grit, I call it. It's like and I see it in my children, thank goodness. There's a certain determination in people who live in the greater area. They're not silver spoons in the mouth kind of folks. They're not entitled. They can take it. I'm a pretty honest person. I can remind people they need to do better, and they accept it. Whereas I think sometimes I don't think that's the case. And perhaps this generation of students in some places is particularly difficult, but I don't find it here. The students that come today are the same kind as when Shawn came here. I also have a couple other things that I tell them to be kind. And I feel like our students are kind. When you come, music's competitive. When you're here, say you play the flute, there might be 14 flute players here. Well, everybody wants to be first chair. They were all first chair when they came. And so, in the midst of the semester after semester auditions, they don't always win first chair. But I see a collegiality and an acceptance. And I think that's something that's a little bit unusual. I don't see the uber mean, kind of mean-spirited. I'm not suggesting they're happy always with how things turn out for them, but I do feel like they can take it. And being kind, I think, is something that helps in life. The other thing is that you have to work hard. I don't know about any of you, but no one handed me anything in my life. My mother was about 5'2", and she was kind of a bulwark person. She didn't have an easy life at all. And she raised basically 3 boys by herself. And she was the strongest person that I've ever met to this day. And if I have anything to offer in the world, it's because of my mom and my wife, Stephanie. But she expected my brothers and I to do the right thing all the time. And that didn't mean that we always agreed with her, but it was okay,
Just like when I didn't agree with Dr. Anderson or Greg on certain occasions.
Yeah, she yelled at you. There you go.
There's a great story about that where
there we go.
Her executive assistant was it was Gwen Latessa. And she called me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to go to a meeting. Dr. Anderson wants to see you." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll get back to her in a couple hours." And Gwen goes, "No, you need to change that meeting to now." And I'm like, "Oh, God." And then I go into the office, and she's running around in her bare feet because she didn't like to run around in her high heels. And she get in my office, and I'm like, "Oh." But I think the moral of the story is like she said earlier, you learn from the people that mentored you, and it was in a good yelling. It wasn't in like it was. I did something stupid, but I knew, but I thought of it, and you learn from your mistakes, and that's how I learned between her and Greg Goulas.
There's nothing wrong with being redirected when we stray a little.
That was such a nice way to word that, too.
Yeah. Well, I've worked on that, Cindy.
Go ahead here.
You're talking 20 years ago. I mean, you're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Tony got redirected oftentimes.
Yeah. You look the same, Anthony. My goodness. He's taking the anti-aging pills. Something Shawn didn't share with you is that he's the oboe professor at YSU, too, on top of everything else.
He's
The
the what,
what?
professor?
The oboe and English
Oh
horn.
my gosh, how nice.
Yeah, he's a star.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Shawn.
I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't be doing anything I'm doing without Dr. Gage. So
Yeah.
he's got that way of instilling confidence in you when you don't think you can do something. And he says,
Mm.
no, you're doing this and you can do this. So
He's done
that's the only reason I'm where I'm at.
he's done a great job. I'm really,
Usually
really.
I was just told, yeah, you'll do this, and that's the end of the discussion.
I tried to be maybe nicer, but I meant the same thing. No, it's YSU. It's the familial part of YSU. Is I tell parents all the time that YSU is big enough to be competitive, so your son or daughter will have to work to get what they want, but it's small enough for us to love your child, and I mean that. It's been my main message, and especially now that I've had two children go through the school, one in theater, creative writing, and photography. I don't know, Claudia got a whole bunch of degrees. Brendan in music school. I feel like I have a window as a father that I can share with prospective students and parents that I didn't have before. I just had a teacher's perspective, of course, but it really, because we sit around this table and we talk about school, and you know how kids are, they're pretty honest about their experiences, especially with their parents. And I'm really proud of the Dana School. I am. I see through my son the opportunities that he has gotten. And I think he could, like Shawn, can be a difference maker in the world. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to that, to the Dana School. No doubt.
Well, and I think that you hit the nail on the head, Steve, when you said that, you know, Youngstown State turns out hardworking students. And, you know, well, I'm looking at two of them, Shawn and Tony. They have good work ethics, they have good morals, they have good values, and they're hard workers. And that's something that we can all be very proud of.
Well, I say love music a lot, and I think it could be misconstrued a little bit. And it can be just as objective as that, because certainly music helps the world be a much better place. But it also, for me, it's a bigger thing, because I think when you have love in your heart, it manifests itself in behaviors and approaches to relationships that affect, in a nonverbal way, how they might perceive you and or each other, how they might handle the inevitable stress of life. Because let's face it, none of us expected anything like what we've had to deal with these last 14 months. I don't know how you could have prepared for that. And it could have been devastating, and it probably has been, but I don't feel personally devastated. I'm sad and looking forward to, I got my shots. Hopefully we can move on. But I do think that kind of passion and intrinsic love that you often get because you're either a singer or an instrumentalist or at least a consumer of music. You talk about lumps in your throats. Those kind of experiences, I think, change the way we are as human beings. And I feel fortunate that I was in a profession that could provide that. Yeah. And I value, and I push really hard, Shawn will attest to this, about the emotional component of making music. It's not something that I take for granted. And I believe we have an obligation, frankly, if not moral, certainly ethical, to help provide something that has some sort of an emotional gratification for the consumer. And, YSU does that real well. Kids do it really well.
Well, I appreciate Shawn and Dr. Anderson coming on. And we're going to finish with Dr. Gage with some fun questions. Shawn and Cindy, stay on. We'll be with you in a quick second. So, Dr. Gage, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and just an enjoyment. And I hope you enjoyed Shawn and Dr. Anderson coming on.
Very, very much. I absolutely did.
So at the end of each show, I like to have some fun questions.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best.
Best accomplishment?
Hmm. I probably have taught 12 or 1,300 students in my career, maybe more, Anthony. If I've impacted them in any way, that even some of them, that would be a great accomplishment.
Okay.
Professionally, that's certainly it. Being a father and husband is clearly something for which I'm grateful.
Okay. Because the answer can be professional or personal. It doesn't matter. Best memory.
Well, I have a few. Does it have
Go
to be?
for it.
All right. Certainly both Carnegie Hall performances. Standing with the Marching Pride at the 1997 championship game when we won that. It's something I'll never, ever forget. It was just magical. I had 200 some kids in the band. I mean, it was really, really, really spectacular. So I'd say those are the two.
Okay.
Memories.
Best experience. Sorry for making you take a test at this time.
So again, I'm going to say Carnegie Hall. Not so much just for me, Anthony. And in our world, that's kind of the pinnacle. That's the top of the mountain. But to share it with, in this case, twice with two groups of 50-some students, knowing that that was something that they were going to aspire to, and they got it here. They tasted that, that level of historic significance as an undergraduate student or grad student.
Okay. I know you mentioned this earlier, but your role model.
Oh man, I have so many.
You're more than welcome to list them off. You're allowed.
Well, my professional role model, although I didn't know him or work with him, has always been Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein is the consummate musician, scholar, teacher, composer. And in my life, I had Tony Kozak at Warsaw, the choral director, Norm Beamish at Auburn High School in New York, Joe Shirk and James South at Emporia State, and then here, Jim Tressel and Tony Leonardi probably are the two people that affected me, and I tried to live up to the successes that they had, and I would hope that somewhere along the way, what I've tried to do would have made them proud of me, because I certainly aspired to be the kind of human beings and teachers that they were.
Okay. And then the final question, if you could meet one person, past or present, who would it be and why?
Jesus Christ.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that.
For every good reason.
Understandable. Dr. Gage,
And I hope
I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I congratulate you on your retirement, and nothing but the best.
Thank you, sir.
If you want to stay on after this, we'll be good. Everyone, hopefully you enjoyed Dr. Gage retiring after 40-some years of service. And if you'd like to see more podcasts, interviews, or announcements, please go to anthonyvspano.com. Thank you, everyone. God bless, and have a great night.